tonight. Continuing the conversation, big battle. I think it really does come down to the athleticism of Georgia's defense, though, Rich. I mean, the way they can run sideline to contain Brandon Wimbush. I mean, he rushed for over 100 yards last week, 185 passing yards through the air. For me, though, it is that back end led by Dominic Sanders that I think could force him to read coverage, and I think that's the mismatch that you want to see play out. I think Georgia dominates this ballgame. Double-digit victory. Kirby Smart and the crew, 31-17.
Well, a couple of thoughts. Number one, I love games between traditional powers that we don't normally see. I mean, the only time these teams played, 1981, I mean, Joe Lisi was still wearing a members only and a headband at that particular time. That's how long ago it was. And so I love being able, I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for college fans to see Georgia against Notre Dame. Great for these Georgia kids to be out in South Bend, one of the cathedrals of college football. But I think it's asking a lot for Jake Fromm to go into this arena at night and beat Notre Dame. But I will say this. How about this for you to ponder on? If Fromm plays well and Georgia wins, is that the last we see of Jacob Eason as a starting quarterback in Athens? I mean, you might as well at that point. It would remind me. It would remind me of 3 years ago with Deshaun Watson at Clemson as a true freshman, right? Didn't start the season,
right?
But once he was inserted into the lineup, Dabo realized at that point he gives us a better chance of winning. And although Jake Fromm does not have the same physicality, doesn't have the same next level arm talent, he's got that it factor. He's got something that really brings the rest of the team to rally behind him, even as a young teenager. So that's going to be a fascinating storyline to watch. I just think, Joe, that you got the better offensive line at Notre Dame. Mike McGlinchey, Quentin Nelson, two terrific offensive linemen. And I think you'll see more balance out of the Notre Dame offense than what Georgia can provide with such a young quarterback.
Well, that being said, I mean, the one thing that if you're a Notre Dame fan that you're happy about last week is that you got quarterback pressures. This was a team that only recorded 14 total sacks last year, ranked 118th nationally. They did have 3 sacks last week, so that's a great sign for that Notre Dame defense overall heading into this matchup. I think when you look at the stats from last week, though, they held Temple to 85 rushing yards on the ground, but 245 through the air. And when you think about the speed of Georgia on the outside, even though they only passed for 145 yards last week, it's the speed factor of an SEC team that I think Georgia can attack that secondary. That'll take the pressure off the offensive line in terms of run blocking. And look for Sony Michel to be utilized in this matchup. They utilized him in the Wildcat last week. He had 87 rushing yards. Nick Chubb had 96. But look for Sony Michel in the short to intermediate passing game to be mismatched on linebackers and nickelbacks. I think that's the difference in this ballgame.
Does Mike Elko, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, does he stack the box to stop Nick Chubb and Sony Michel? I mean, I think that just makes good common sense. If you're the defensive coordinator of Notre Dame and you have a raucous crowd at home, you're facing a true freshman quarterback, has never started a game, has never played a game on the road at this level. I'm thinking you put your linebackers, you put those safeties. I could see Drew Tranquill having a big game in the box to stop those running backs. To me, that makes the most sense. You know what? Georgia not only has the young quarterback, I still think, Joe, they have a shaky offensive line. They don't have any surefire number one wide receivers, so that passing attack would concern me. I'm forcing Jake Fromm to beat me if I'm Mike Elko.
And you have to be aggressive in this ballgame. Third down conversions are going to be critical in this ballgame for Georgia. I mean, last week they struggled in third down conversions. They converted 5 of 14 attempts. On the flip side, they allowed App State to convert 7 of 18 in terms of third down situations, even though it was in mop-up time for Brandon Wimbush. If he can maintain drives, that's the matchup that you want to see play out. I mean, can Notre Dame keep Jake Fromm and, more importantly, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb on the sidelines in terms of cutting down possessions with the young quarterback? That'll be the matchup. But for me, I still like Kirby Smart in this spot. I mean, if there's one type of defensive mind that you want to have go up against a young quarterback, even though he's got himself a young quarterback, Brandon Wimbush, he will force him to read coverage in this ballgame. And when you have a veteran secondary, I think Georgia has the advantage there.
no Malcolm Parrish, right, in the Georgia secondary. That's a concern. But how much reading of coverage is he going to have to do? I mean, I think Notre Dame is going to be very, very particular in what it is they're doing, which is they're going to pound the ball. And they showed that last week with 3 100-yard rushers against, again, I know it's maybe not quintessential Temple, but Temple is a tough program. Temple has always been, or at least recently, has been a very defensive-minded team. But they just pounded it with Joshua Adams. They pounded it with Dexter Williams. I like the way, Brandon Wimbush he's not a tall, statuesque quarterback. He's not an easy target. He looks more like a linebacker. So once he gets outside of the tackles, he's tough to bring down. So I don't know if he's going to be doing a ton of reading of coverages. I think you're going to see more play action out of Brandon Wimbush, and then he's going to be looking downfield for Equanimous St. Brown and Alize Mack, who is a terrific tight end. Watch the tight ends in this game in general. Isaac Nauta on the Georgia side, but Alize Mack, you've got two young, really good tight ends in this game.
I think it's the defensive line play of Georgia. I think guys like Lorenzo Carter, the speed of Georgia from sideline to sideline, force Jared Wimbush out of the pocket on passing situations, make him roll out, make him look, and short, intermediate throws underneath coverage, quick throws under pressure. I think that's the difference, and I think that's where this matchup will be won in this ballgame. And I really feel that Georgia holds a significant speed advantage, but this is why they play the games. I mean, this is why we're breaking it down right now.
The one thing we could totally agree on is this is a fulcrum game for both of these programs.
Without a doubt.
I think you kind of go in one direction or the other based on this game. I mean, if Georgia gets out of South Bend with a victory, that is a signature win in year 2 for Kirby Smart. I don't care that Notre Dame was 4-8 last year. This is the Fighting Irish in South Bend, which is going to be a wild scene beneath Touchdown Jesus. So if Kirby Smart can get out of there with a victory and be 2-0 after, again, an impressive win over App State. I don't care that it's App State. That is the best team in the Sun Belt Conference. I thought that would be a competitive game. If that's the case, all of a sudden you take a look and say this is the clear-cut favorite to win the SEC East.
Well, this was an App State team that went into Knoxville last year, lost that ball game 20-13. Yeah. I mean, so they were not afraid of playing an SEC team. I mean, this was a solid defense in 2016 as well. I mean, they only allowed 130 rushing yards on the ground to opposing offenses, and they held Josh Dobbs and that offense in check week number 1. And to see Georgia pound it for 221 last week, I think that's a solid effort. I will say this about Notre Dame now. No home field advantage. We had Corey Minor on. We had Alan Pinkett on. They've said the luster is gone from South Bend. Now, I mean, last year they lost to Duke. They lost to Virginia Tech. They lost to Stanford, all at home. If they lose this game in convincing fashion, like I think they will, I mean, we know that Brian Kelly's on the hot seat, but I mean, do they get rid of him before the season's over?
No, I think he'll last till the end of the season regardless, but this hurts. I mean, Brian Kelly has to have this game. I mean, if you're going to make Notre Dame relevant on a national level and you're at home in primetime against a Georgia team that's very good, but this is not an elite program just yet. This is not Alabama. This is not Ohio State. Notre Dame is favored in this game for a reason. And plus, ND, you're facing a true freshman 18-year-old quarterback. You have to win this game if you're Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly, he has a lot more pressure on him than Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's playing with a little bit of house money. Doesn't have to win this game. I think Notre Dame gets out of here with a victory, about a touchdown, 7 or 8 point victory. I'm a little nervous about the front seven of Georgia because they're really good. And one kid in particular, Trenton Thompson, has been a locomotive since the end of last season.
And he could disrupt running lanes.
Absolutely. Obliterated TCU in the bowl game. Looked really good in week 1. 6 tackles, 2 behind the line of scrimmage, and a sack. So Trenton Thompson in the middle of that defensive line. Him against Quentin Nelson, if you want to focus on one game within the game, that's going to be a fantastic matchup.
You're starting to second-guess yourself.
I'm not going to second-guess. I'm sticking to my guns.
When you're expected to win the SEC East, though, like Kirby Smart in year number 2, this is a critical game. Even though you said he's playing with a little bit of house money, for me, and I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan, you know that Georgia faithful want to see Georgia step up on a national stage and dominate to get the momentum back and to to really build momentum heading into SEC play. Because if they lose this ball game, granted it's without Jacob Eason, but this is exactly the MO that their former coach Mark Richt built there in Athens. 10-3, can't win the SEC East, can't get
over the hump.
Right. So there is pressure there for Kirby Smart in year number 2, especially in this ballgame.
I think there is, but I think there's a little bit of a I don't want to say excuse, but he's using a rookie quarterback. He's on the road.
So was Notre Dame.
That's true. He is a rookie quarterback, but he's a junior. I mean, he's been on campus. This is his 3rd year on campus. A little bit different.
Right.
But I agree with you. In terms of experience, Brandon Wimbush has like an extra game over Jake Fromm, so it's a fair point. That to me is what is so delicious about this matchup. Young quarterbacks, because by next year we could be looking at Jake Fromm, Brandon Wimbush as the elite quarterbacks in college football. That potential is there. So there is so much at stake in this game. Love the battle, at the line of scrimmage. Balance of Notre Dame. I think you'll get more from the passing game out of Wimbush than you will from Fromm. So Notre Dame holds serve at home, wins this game, and quiets the Bulldog faithful.
Well, if they do win this game, I have to bring up the question, has the SEC lost its luster then when you look at Tennessee's struggle and when you look at Texas A&M
they
below
lost their
that
luster
big?
a couple of years ago.
Well, I'm just saying, though, from top
Florida
to,
against
from,
Michigan.
From top to bottom, this is what it's all about. When we come back, we'll be talking TCU, Arkansas. We're just getting started. This is Joe Lisi, Rich Cirminiello, live on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network.